June 30th, 1908, Eastern Siberia, Russia. It's a calm, cold morning, like any other morning out here in the Arctic cold of Siberia. Russian settlers and Evenki natives all across this frozen tundra were starting to awake, getting ready to begin their days, when something strange happened. One of these settlers looked up, as they noticed a strange, large, bluish light streaking across the sky. This light, according to eyewitness testimony, said to be as bright as the sun. The man followed the light with his eyes, as it rapidly descended down towards the horizon in front of him. As it continued to fall, there was suddenly a blinding flash, a pillar of fire erupting before him, casting a red glow over the landscape, as a massive billowing cloud of debris was kicked up. Moments later, an explosion would ring out, the sound akin to a squadron of artillery units all letting loose at the same time. Before the man could recover from this blinding light and deafening explosion, he was suddenly knocked off his feet, as a massive shockwave erupted from the source of the blast, the shockwave shattering windows of the nearby buildings and homesteads. Hundreds of miles away, across all of Europe, seismic stations began to ping. From Germany to Denmark and even the United Kingdom, the blast even being recorded all the way across the Atlantic in Washington, D.C. The night sky across Asia and Europe was said to have glowed over the next few days, the sky being so bright, some photographers claimed to be able to take photos at midnight without the use of a flash. It wouldn't be until 10 years later that this strange event would finally be investigated by the Russian government, documenting the vast evidence of destruction in this isolated region of the world. Hello, my name is Finn, welcome to the channel. I will be your guide once again as we step within the void. While the incident that became known as the Tunguska Event would not be scientifically documented until 10 years after it occurred, there were a number of eyewitness accounts that emerged across this sparsely populated region. On the morning of the 17th of June, around 9, we observed an unusual natural occurrence. In the North Karolinsky village, the peasants saw to the northwest, rather high above the horizon, some strangely bright, bluish-white heavenly body, which for 10 minutes moved downwards. The body appeared as a pipe. The sky was cloudless. Only a small dark cloud was observed in the general direction of the bright body. It was hot and dry. As the body neared the ground, the bright body seemed to smudge, and then turn into a giant billow of black smoke. A loud knocking was heard, as if large stones were falling or artillery was fired. All buildings shook. At the same time, the cloud began emitting flames of uncertain shapes. All villagers were stricken with panic and took to the streets. Women cried, thinking this was the end of the world. We had a hut by the river with my brother, Chikarin. We were sleeping. Suddenly we both woke up at the same time. Somebody shoved us. We heard whistling and felt strong wind. We were both in the hut. Couldn't see what was going on outside. Suddenly, I got shoved again. This time so hard I fell into the fire. I got scared. We started crying out for father, mother, brother, but no one answered. There was noise beyond the hut. We could hear trees falling. Chikarin and I got out of our sleeping bags and wanted to run out. But then the thunder struck. This was the first thunder. The earth began to move and rock. The wind hit our hut and knocked it over. My body was pushed down by sticks, but my head was in the clear. Then I saw a wonder. Trees were falling. The branches were on fire. It became mighty bright. It's almost as if there was a second sun. My eyes were hurting. I even closed them. It was like what Russians call lightning. And immediately there was a loud thunderclap. This was the second thunder. The morning was sunny. There were no clouds. Our sun was shining brightly as usual, and suddenly there came a second one. There was another flash, and loud thunder came. This was the third thunderstrike. Wind came again, knocked us off our feet, struck the fallen trees. We looked at the fallen trees, watched the tree tops get snapped off, watched the fires. Suddenly Chikarin yelled, "Look up," and pointed with his hand. I looked there and saw another flash, and it made another thunder, but the noise was less than before. This was the fourth strike, like normal thunder. Now I remember well, there was also one more thunderstrike, but it was small and somewhere far away, where the sun goes to sleep. Again, while the event was seemingly very real, it was seemingly felt and seen by those who lived in this very sparsely populated region. As well, it was felt across all of Europe, where the impact of the explosion registered earthquakes around 5.0 on the Richter scale. However, the area where the actual blast site occurred would not be investigated by scientists until 1921. when Russian mineralogist Leonid Kulik led a team to the Tunguska River basin to conduct a survey. While they never visited the blast area, the man heard many local accounts of this strange event, the scientists theorizing that this was possibly the work of a large meteor impact. When the man returned to the capital later that year, he successfully persuaded the Soviet government to fund an expedition to this impact zone. 6 years later then, in 1927, Kulik would return to Tunguska, leading this expedition. The scientists, believing this to be a meteor impact, expected to find a massive crater. Despite it being 13 years since the event, the impact of the blast was so large that there still would have left a massive crater. So he was shocked to find that there was none. What the scientists did discover was a roughly 8-kilometer zone of scorched upright trees. Farther out from this zone, the massive shock wave was still evident, as there was a large radial pattern of downed trees that emanated from the shock wave's epicenter. It was later discovered that this zone of level forest extended to an area over 2,000 kilometers, its shape being described as a gigantic butterfly with a wingspan of 70 kilometers and a body length of 55 kilometers. The damage impacts similar to the effects of an airburst of a bomb. But with the lack of an impact crater, what exactly could have caused this strange event? So then, what exactly happened here? What sort of event could have caused such a massive scale of damage? Damage that in the modern times would look like it was the work of a large nuclear explosion. But this was 1908. Long before Einstein would ever split the atom. And even if the Soviets were secretly conducting some tests of new military technology, there's nothing on record at this time that could have rivaled anything like this blast. And what about Kulik's meteor impact theory? If this truly was the event of a large meteor crash landing into Earth, how do we explain the lack of a crater? The leading theory, however, is in fact a meteor or comet strike. But not just your average normal meteor strike, a meteor airburst. In 1930, the British meteorologist and mathematician F.J.W. Whipple suggested that the Tunguska body was a small comet. According to the scientists, a comet could have been completely vaporized by the impacts with Earth's atmosphere, leaving no obvious traces. However, while a comet or meteor would explain what eyewitnesses saw that night, the large streak of light coming down from the sky, it would also explain the large-scale damage emanating from, the shockwave center. It doesn't explain the lack of a crater. Soviet explosion experiments in the mid-1960s using airbursts of explosive charges were able to produce a similar butterfly-shaped blast pattern, similar to that was found at the Tunguska site. This evidence contributing to the meteor airburst theory. American astrobiologist Christopher Chiba puts forth a theory to explain how an asteroid could have created such an explosion without leaving an impact crater. According to their model, when the forces of a body's descent become greater than the cohesive force holding it together, the object blows apart, releasing all of its energy at once. The result then is no crater, with damage being distributed over a fairly wide radius, this damage being the result of the thermal energy. In February 2013, computer models were run by scientists that concluded that the likeliest candidate for this event was a stony body between 50 and 80 meters in diameter, which exploded 10 to 14 kilometers above the ground, releasing energy equivalent to around 10,000 kilotons conservatively, this blast being on par with the 1980 Mount St. Helens eruption. For context, the first nuclear bomb, Little Boy, that was dropped on Japan had a yield of around 15 kilotons. Though scientific consensus is that the Tunguska event was caused by the airburst explosion of an asteroid, it has yet to be conclusively proven at the time of recording. Another compelling theory put forward by astrophysicist Wolfgang Kundt proposed that the event was caused by the release of an explosion of 10 million tons of natural gas from deep within the Earth's crust. Put simply, according to the scientists, the gas began leaking out of the crust. This gas would come into contact with some sort of ignition, such as lightning. Once the gas was ignited, the fire would streak along this gas like a wick within the sky, down to its source on the ground, setting off a massive explosion. Of course, as well, with any unexplained mystery like this, there are the more conspiracy-minded theories out there. One of the more popular theories, I'm sure you could probably guess, being an alien crash landing. This theory seems to have gained prominence following the fictional short story Explosion written by Russian sci-fi writer, apologies if I'm going to butcher this, Alexander Kazantsev. It should also be noted that this is not the only time that this writer wrote fictional short stories about the Tunguska event. It seems that the man was, well, rather obsessed with it. So then, what was the cause of the Tunguska event? Was it a meteor impact, a meteor airburst, an explosion of natural gas that seeped from deep beneath the Earth's surface, or maybe the crash landing of a ship containing little green men? What we do know conclusively is that something happened on this cold, bleak morning in 1908. Something that left the land scarred and scientists forever mystified. For now, though, it seems like the Tunguska event will remain an unexplained mystery. Another intrigue locked away within the void. Thank you all for watching. If you did enjoy this strange trip into the unexplained, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, as your engagement on these videos really does go a long way in putting them into the algorithm. If you did enjoy this tale of the mysterious, then why don't you check out some of my other videos on screen now. And again, make sure that you are subscribed and hit that notification bell so you never miss a weekly upload. Anyways, friends, stay safe out there, and I hope you join me on another trip within the void.